So, yesterday I just sat down real quick with a pen and paper and made a list just as quickly as possible of what I could think of actual motivations or functions or purposes that people have for making music. For playing music, making music. Like I said, I didn't sit around and ponder this for too long. I really just rattled it off as quickly as possible. And so it's an incomplete list, and some of these things overlap. Well, many of these things overlap with each other, but in any case, I'll just read it off, what I jotted down. Some of the most obvious in a commercial sense first: entertainment, money, which is the stupidest thing I can think of. To have something to do, in the sense of some people, I do it, I guess, if I'm at home and bored, twiddle with an instrument in the same way that somebody might just mess with a Rubik's Cube. Worship, that's got like a billion different dimensions to it. Devotion, obviously related to worship, but something different. Could also be devotion to a person, a king, a history. Asserting group identity, also related. Praise of people, okay, I just said that. But that is a very specific tradition. Telling stories, myths, histories, once again related. Dance, well, that's got a billion dimensions too. Trance and or ecstasy. There's an interesting book called Music and Trance, and it was written by a French musicologist, and in the foreword to the English edition he talks about how the words trance and ecstasy have got exactly flipped meanings between English and French, so that's a funny thing. Meditation, sounding out the universe. Maybe some people have no idea what I'm talking about with that, but I feel like that's actually what I'm trying to do most of the time. For the sound itself, just for the sake of hearing certain sounds or experiencing certain sounds, especially if they're very loud, I would say a physical sound environment. To signal something, well, I'll get into details in a minute. For recognition, by which I mean personal, status, recognition. That should have been placed up at the beginning with money. One of the stupider things. To communicate with animals. Might sound silly, but using instruments and also vocalizing for the sake of hunting is actually very common. To influence plants, as in singing songs to make the plants grow, that's actually quite common. To influence the weather, similar. To bond people together, it's also related to some of the earlier things about nationality, history. To mourn, could be mourning as in a funeral, could mourn any number of things. Also to celebrate any number of things. To express love, whether romantic individual love or, well, any kind. To evoke sexuality, as in some of our favorite R&B music. To forget self, also something I'm trying to do most of the time when I play, a real challenge. What am I saying? Communication across long distances. That would be found often amongst people who live in mountainous or hilly areas. Think Bulgarian vocal music, boy, they can communicate. Also in North Carolina, what they call hollering, they can do it. Rallying troops. So the entire tradition of military music, from which much popular music comes, related to that, to terrify the enemy. It's a bit sinister, but I actually really love this one. The ability of music to evoke, just to make you poop your pants in fear. I don't know why I wrote this last, but exorcism, to exorcise demons. So, before I even might go back to that list, let me say, if a person would ask me what kind of music I listen to, the answer that I would give, just to give an answer, I would say ethnic, traditional field recordings, right? Like, so essentially music from the what do they call it? Ethnomusicological. Sometimes the German words get all mixed up in my head. Literature. So from the standpoint of commercial recordings, or what most people just think of as music, right? Commercial music. That would probably be the most fringy genre, right? That would be considered probably by most people to be the smallest. It's probably almost certainly the smallest market share of commercial recordings. Those recordings are scarcely commercial at all. They're usually just supported by institutions and universities and grants and things like this. They're scarcely commercial. So I think to the average person, if I say that's what I listen to, they probably think I'm listening just about to the most rare kind of music. I would assert that would actually be, by a long shot, the most common form of music by far. But then again, I have to qualify that by saying, to refer to that as one kind of music is absolutely absurd. What would be included under, I don't know what I try to give a name to, ethno-traditional field recordings. What would actually be included underneath that umbrella would be an unbelievable variety of types of music. Right? Unbelievable variety. It only appears to be a single, genre or type of music in a commercial setting. If you people don't really go into record stores anymore or CD shops. But if you just needed to put those CDs on a shelf somewhere in the CD shop, you would have hip hop and rock and this and that, and then you would have a shelf for it. But somebody is ringing my doorbell. I'm gonna have to pause this and come back. Okay, I'm back. That was the Jehovah's Witnesses. I can't believe that they found me in my little studio. I'm in a tiny back house in a garden. Jehovah's Witness pamphlet in German. That's great. Okay, so where was I? The idea that ethnic specific ethnographic traditional field recordings that represents the overwhelming majority of music and varieties of music. So to get back to this list, and what I said earlier, probably very many people, when they think of music, just think of either commercial recordings, commercially recorded music and produced music, and conceivably they would include classical music, with the understanding that a lot of that music was made before recordings, but was similarly documented and packaged in the form of notation, which in a certain sense is not vastly different than making a commercial recording. So for most people, that would be what people mean with music. And if you happen to at some point pick up some Smithsonian Institution record of some Yoruban drumming from the 1950s, then that's just a little something on the side that you can use to add a little flavor to your pop record. But that's a very inverse perception of things. Just simply chronologically speaking, the advent of notated music and or recorded music is extremely new, and I would even argue that recorded music is going to in the future be seen as just a blip on the radar, something that kind of came and went in the 20th century, and that's about it. But let's if we would go back to this list, like maybe I can give some examples. everybody's aware of music as worship, church music, that religions have music. Asserting group identity, I would say, for example, you can actually see this if you go to a big soccer stadium. The chanting involved. This is not really, music as art. This is music so that to help the fans of a specific team have a sense of group identity. Maybe something like a national anthem also has this. But any kind of song that is that asserts group identity. Praise of people. There's always been a long tradition of court musicians who have the famous griots of West Africa, for example, court musicians whose job is to sing the praises of a king or a leader or something like that. What else we got? Oh yeah, also the griots telling stories, myths, histories. The griots are great historians. This is how history is conveyed. We also have, I think people could think of, what in Western culture we think of folk music. There's a lot of historical storytelling going on in that music. People can identify with this. Dance, this is very obvious, but of course there's tons of dance music, but also dance itself has probably served as wide a number of purposes as this list of music has. And dance gets short shrift. I think dance is every bit as worth really examining its role as music is, and the idea that dance and music can be separated is kind of silly. Kind of related to that, trance, ecstasy. This can be done in group rituals. It can be done by shamans who go into a trance state. It might be something that, like I said, done alone or done in a group. Dance might also be involved. Meditation, it's related. Okay, now here's one I wrote. Sounding out the universe. That's probably just my own phrasing, and that's not a technical phrase. But once again, this may sound like something fringy. I think if you look at, I don't know how possible it is to look at it, but if one could examine all humans who have ever existed at all time, you might find that this is actually a really common one. That there is some sense that one can engage in music in order to use kind of a hippie way of saying it, resonate with the cosmos. Again, you would find this in you could find it in Carlos Santana. You find it in the song titles of 60s jazz records. You also find this tradition in the ancient Greeks who was it Pythagoras was who looked at the overtone series as being representative of the order of the vibration of the cosmos, and also modern quantum physicists have found that this is also true on a subatomic level, on a quantum level, that actually there's a lot of validity to this, that one, and somehow I would think of whale songs. If I listen to recordings of whale songs, I don't really know what the whale's motivations are, but I feel like wow, I'm hearing the sounding out of the universe. I don't know, it's just how it seems to me. To signal something, I remember reading once that I've never been to Indonesia, but I remember reading that one could go to a marketplace in say Java or something, and that hawkers would actually use certain kind of whistles or certain melodies to indicate which specific fruit or whatever they're selling. There is some of that here, like in Germany where I live. There's these farmers markets, and there's always there tends to be a fairly large number of Turkish vendors, and so the German word for a sale is Angebot, and so if they want to say something's being offered cheap, you can say Angebot. But the Turkish hawkers, they sing it. They go Angebot, 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 and when you're even too far away to hear the word, you hear this little melody, Angebot, Angebot, and like the Turkish guys got a sale going on. Okay, this one I should have written at the top of the list by entertainment and money for recognition. Now, this video is going up on the internet, so we know on the internet this is the primary motivation. I'll get back to this. But of course, you know, we all, a lot of us guys know the feeling of being, you know, a teenager and thinking that if we play the guitar really well, that the girls will like us or that the guys will think we're cool. So that's this motivation for recognition, very shallow. To communicate with animals, once again, hunting is now just something that people do as a hobby, but has of course been vitally important to human beings since the beginning of time, and there have always been hunting songs. And of course you can also see this now with something like a duck call. What's that famous TV show, Duck Dynasty? You know, the guys with the little duck whistles, or the people can imitate that, you know. So it's the same thing. If you listen, a duck call, you know, that you buy might not sound very musical, but you can find recordings of hunting music, which actually is quite musical. To influence plants, there are beautiful harvest songs, planting songs, which were sung to influence the plants, to influence weather. The same thing. Everybody knows the famous, you know, rain stick or rain dance. You know, this is sort of a famous thing. You know, you might have had some remnant of that at the famous Woodstock, this thing where the guys are just chanting like "No rain." It's not that they're exactly singing, but it's a related thing. To bond people together. A lot can be said. Campfire songs do this. It's similar to also what I was saying about people at football games. To give a feeling of group identity, you would also find it in sort of church environments. A school song, a school anthem. To mourn, funeral music. We certainly don't, at least I say we, you know, Western white people, we, sure, I think is a lack of real mourning, singing music. Celebration. I don't really feel like getting into that. To express love, this is quite well known. To evoke sexuality. Why do I have to laugh at that one? I don't know, just because I just like thinking about R&B and, you know, dancing and stuff. To forget self. Now, like I said, maybe I wrote this down because it's personal to me. I spent a lot of time, or I should say time, effort in playing, trying to stop being self-aware. I ask my music students a lot, why do we have this phrase, sex, drugs, and rock and roll? What do those things have in common? And I always say the answer is that these are all efforts to get out of our own heads, you know. And the tragic part is the drugs part, that we find it so difficult either with music or with sex to get out of our own heads that we tend to need a fast chemical agent to do the job for us, you know. In my own personal life, you know, I relied earlier in my life so heavily on alcohol for this that, you know, eventually the amount of alcohol I needed in order to relax was so much that I no longer could do the things that I wanted to be relaxed for. So, you know, I had to quit drinking, and so my own personal quest with music, and also just with being a human being, has since then, and it's been a number of years, has been to find a way to get into that state of self-forgetting without the alcohol, without the drugs part. And to me, that's been an extremely worthwhile quest. That's maybe kind of personal to me, but that's what it is. Like I said, communication across long distances, pastoral people, people living in hills, mountains, often have an ability to focus their voice in such a way that it just shoots like a laser beam across long distances. And you know, I especially recommend Bulgarian vocal music, for listening to some incredible examples of this. Of course, it's it becomes a musical art form, but it has its beginnings in this communication across long distance. There's also an incredible documentary about hollering in North Carolina, and they talk all about how they sort of do these piercing hollering songs in order to communicate all kind of things. They have certain melodies that just mean I need help. If you hear a certain melody, you know, oh, somebody over there needs help, you know, or somebody, you know, there's a number of different things they communicate over distance with song. Rallying troops, so military music. I don't like, it's not that I'm a fan of war and militarism, but I find military music to be a fascinating tradition. And then attached to that, terrifying the enemy. There's something I was listening to recently with some recordings of an ancient Celtic battle horn, and it's called the Carnix, and it looks like a dragon, it's shaped like a dragon, and it had this function that when the Celtic troops would play this, it would inspire the troops who were playing the instrument, inspire them with this wild courage and this fearlessness to fight. Also related to forgetting of self, also related to group identity. But the same sound would inspire fear in the enemy. And when I listen to these recordings, I have this sense of like the fear of God, but in a kind of a weird ancient Celtic sense, like God represented through like an army. That's just the feeling. It's just the immediate reaction I get, and it's chilling. And to me, it also feels related to what I said about sounding out the universe, that there's just this sound of like there's some fundamental awe in German. What we call awe, they call Ehrfurcht, which is like honor, fear. It's an amazing word. I don't know. I wrote down exorcism. I don't know much about exorcism, but what now that I see this, I realize I missed just the most important one: healing, music for healing. So song to heal people, song in healing rituals, or percussion or music made in healing rituals. This is often tied in with dance, tied in with a number of these other things. So anyway, that's, like I said, that's just a list that I just rattled off. I'm sure it's quite incomplete, but the three that I wrote down, initially: entertainment, money, and recognition. I think looking at this list, it's a no-brainer to say that those are the three most base motivations on the list, the least noble. They're not necessarily evil, but they're just the least noble. They're the least honorable. And as I was saying, when a lot of people, maybe most people now, hear the word music, they're thinking about music as a product, music produced and packaged to be sold. And there's also a great deal of music just that's sort of uploaded to the internet. And this music is maybe not 100%, but getting damn near 100% motivated by entertainment, money, and recognition. And entertainment is not necessarily a harmful thing. I mean, money's not necessarily a harmful thing, but like I said, these are the most base purposes, and also to do, for personal recognition. That one is really, there's nothing harmful about money or entertainment, but operating for the purpose of personal recognition is not. It's not a horrible thing, but it's not a healthy thing. It's not something that helps one grow. It's an ego-driven motive, and the money motive. I mean, once upon a time, there was probably like a heyday when there was money in music. In the '60s, people could just sort of form a band, and suddenly they had a house that they all lived in together, and a van that they could all drive around together, and somehow there was cash there, but boy, those days are long gone. There's nothing wrong with getting paid to play music. If you play music and somebody offers you money, great, take it. But like, if you're motivated by money, like, look anywhere other than music. Just go become a stockbroker or something. Like, entertainment could be stretched out. I mean, entertainment is sort of a vague word, and it could bleed over into some of these more noble motivations or purposes. Dance, ecstatic dance can be healing, can be bonding. Music, which is there's a great amount of recorded commercial music which elevates me into an ecstatic state, or makes me cry with emotion, or has a healing effect on me. So entertainment can bleed over into some really beautiful things. That one's a little bit vague, just like saying art is like exceedingly vague. I feel like here in Germany that there's like a strong sense of reverence for this idea of art, and that's probably a topic for a whole nother day. But should I wrap up the video there? Probably so. All right.